Going live and going live, and we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gravity Max live stream. Today, we will be talking about some dark subjects, but also an interesting subject and like detective-ing and investigating, and it's interesting. So yeah, and then there's also a lot more depth to it, something that you probably like a side of something that you haven't learned about before. So let's get right into it. Today we have Camilla as our guest. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm pretty good
Going live.
actually. How are you?
And I am doing well. We're live. Also, hello everyone, and of course my co-host Sebastian. Today we will be talking about. Oh yeah. Oh, is it? Okay. No problem. Yes. Duplicate. Yeah, no problem. It's funny. I did a test stream once where so it was on the 30-second delay, and I had the stream playing full blast as well, like intentionally to see if I could do like I don't know something interesting with the delay. So you would end up getting a like 30-second loop of just me saying "all right" or something like that, and it would just be like "all right, all right, all right."
You do a round with
But
yourself.
anyway, yeah, exactly. It's fun. Um, So yeah, let's just do the social media quickly. Oh, and sorry that we were a little bit late today. We just yeah, it's all good. We're all here now. So yeah, let's see. First, follow Gravity Max on social media. Visit Gravity Max website. Interesting stuff there. If you want to check it out, links in the description. Also, follow Sebastian on social media at 128 Seconds Twitter and 128 Seconds YouTube. Quick educational videos, counterpart to our longer videos that we do here. Very useful and informative, and I would highly recommend you check it out. And then finally, a somewhat odd start. My third book is on Amazon. I think the link is in the description. Yeah, and yeah, it's just a sci-fi book. Hope you guys all like it. So go check that out. And without further ado, GMLS Los Angeles. Hmm. Because of crime.
I realize.
Oh, it's not. Oh, that's
It
that.
might not be. They might
Well,
not have been able to hear this entire time. Hello, everyone.
I'll help you figure that out, or I'll do this for you while you figure that out. Yes, today we're talking about the methods by which you can catch a criminal. One particular method by studying their mind, figuring out how they work, their motivations, because when you can figure out why someone is doing something, it can help you predict what they're going to do next, and it can help you find them. And then on the other side of things, once they're in court, it can help you with certain important court things. There are many different crimes whose definitions rely on intent to do something. And how can you figure out what someone intended to do unless you know their motivations? So that is what we're going to be talking about today. It is called forensic psychology.
Awesome. Yeah, so they should be able to hear me now.
Cool.
Crime.
All right.
Crime happens.
Crime.
Crimes.
Yes.
They
So,
do happen.
welcome to GMLS Los Angeles. We're gonna look at some gnarly cases. We're gonna look at some personality types, and we're gonna talk about what it means to be a true forensic psychologist. And both before and after a suspect is found.
Yes. All right.
Camilla is a licensed forensic psychologist of 26 years. Could you speak to that?
26?
You don't
I
look, you don't
just
look
turned
a,
17.
you don't look a day over 17.
Okay. It's fine. I'm not I have no license. I'm not a forensic psychologist. Sebastian is a liar. But I did take I took a forensics class. I'm in the middle of a psychology class, and I'm a nerd who reads about a lot of things. So, I know a little bit about this
Nice.
subject.
Yeah.
Just because it's fun. It's fun.
Before stream, you also claim to know who the Zodiac Killer was. Could you speak to that for a second?
Wait.
Yeah, my only comment on that is refer back to when I said Sebastian is a liar.
Okay. So let's see. So our first slide here is pathology. So this can apply sort of two ways, either the pathology of a perpetrator or the pathology of a victim of a crime. And both can actually help you figure out what happened.
Yeah. So pathology is basically, it's the state of the, it's the state of the body of either the victim or the perpetrator or both. So this would include toxicology reports and autopsy results. So, what injuries they had, where they were, how long before the death the injuries occurred, if they happened before or after, or, which injury actually killed the person, if it was a murder or an accident. And the pathology of the perpetrator can also tell you that kind of thing, because any injuries on them might have been from the surroundings. Toxicology in them could lead to not motive, but like if there was alcohol in their system, that would be a clue towards what happened. And also, if the victim fought back, you would see typical struggle signs, I guess, on the perpetrator's body. So pathology can tell you a lot of things that link directly into forensic psychology based on what injuries they had, when they happened, and leading into forensic psychology, why they happened. So it's a really useful aspect of forensics.
Yeah, very, very well said. Yeah, so the first slide we have here is about chronic injuries, and here we're specifically sort of looking at chronic brain injuries, and so this would be more about the perpetrator in terms of motivation. So there are a few, like, I don't know how many, there's probably a lot of different sort of chronic illnesses that affects the brain negatively over time. This one, for example, is CTE, which is common in like football players and I think probably boxing as well. I'm not sure about that. I know football for sure, just due to repeated injury, not really injury, just repeated blows to the head, essentially. But there are others, like there's Alzheimer's, which is brought on naturally. And I imagine a lot of different mental illnesses that we are all familiar with have a physiological aspect as well. And so knowing about these diseases can help you determine the perpetrator's mental state. And based on that, it can sort of lead you to figure out what might be going on.
Yeah, definitely.
It's also very useful, again, for determining motive, and we'll talk about this later, but pleading insanity. There's like sort of different legal definitions for insanity than I think medical definitions. I think that happens quite a bit, that medicine has slightly different definitions for things than like the legal system does. For instance, like I think in medicine, a death due to homicide is not necessarily a murder. It's just like, human caused, but that could be in the legal system, a whole host of things, that could be murder or manslaughter or
homicide.
Yeah.
Like, for the legal definition of insanity, all that it looks at is at the time the crime was committed and nothing else. So they can like make the claim that, obviously, like, they were quote unquote sane for the entire rest of their life and following the incident, but during the incident they had like a bout of insanity or something like that, and in that way you can plead insanity for that.
Yeah.
Also, with the brain, diseases, detrimental stuff like that, a big issue of that is that, and I think this is the same with CTE, you can only diagnose it post-autopsy. You can't know if a person has CTE or a disease similar to that unless they have died and you are looking at their brain. So that
is a difficulty.
That's an obstacle.
I think there might be like MRI techniques, but at the very least, it's something that you'd only find out, for the most part, after a crime has been committed and the person has been caught. But yeah.
I'm looking it up. No, yeah, you're right. CTE can only be diagnosed post-mortem.
Okay. So yeah, that makes it very difficult. So, I mean, in many of these instances, the demonstrated behaviors on the outside can actually be used to diagnose what is going on inside, which is fairly interesting. But yeah.
I'm going to sound like a psychopath this entire stream, because people are, either you or Sebastian are going to say like, yeah, so you can use this to find out whether the perpetrator has done this. And I'm just going to be like, yeah, it's so cool.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, when I mentioned what this episode topic was to my mom, she was over the moon about it, because she used to actually want to be a forensic psychologist.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
it's so cool.
Yeah,
man.
I am pretty sure she's a psych major. She just didn't go into the forensic side. So she was talking about her experiences through the psychology classes and all of her favorite classes. Her favorite class was literally called abnormal psychology, and they looked at pretty much what we're gonna look at in the latter half of this episode, with the some pretty messed up cases.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I still might.
All right. So nice. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Pop on to acute injuries.
Yeah, acute injuries. So this can apply to both the perpetrator or the victim. And I have head injuries here, but it doesn't have to be a head injury. So if there's a murder, say, immediately you want to look for the acute injuries and see what killed this person, because that can help you figure out who the perpetrator was. It can help you determine the murder weapon based on like what you sort of see. It's interesting. I was watching this documentary like the past 2 days about the Son of Sam murders, which we'll talk about a little later. And what I found surprising is that some people can actually survive a headshot, like getting, which is just perplexing. But
it depends on where the bullet goes, how long it's been there, what the bullet is made of sometimes. It mostly depends on where the bullet ends up.
But yeah, something very sort of interesting and relevant about the Son of Sam case was that before he sent like a letter calling himself the Son of Sam, they referred to him as the 44 caliber killer, because all of these murders were occurring with a distinctive, 44 caliber round. And the police were actually saying, if you know anyone like with a 44 caliber rifle, or I mean, it was a pistol. Like, give us information about that. Like, we want to figure that out. So by analyzing these injuries and saying, okay, this is 44 caliber rounds being used, the police were able to figure out what the murder weapon was, and that gives you more information about who the killer might be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The acute injuries can be really helpful, but even if sometimes it can be helpful to know even outside of the murder weapon injuries, because another aspect of forensics is fiber analysis, and if depending on like how clean a cut is, or how deep it is, or the shape of it, you can figure out if it happened from like asphalt or gravel, or if there are, the fiber analysis was going to be like if someone had clawed at a carpet, there would be pieces of carpet underneath their fingernails, and it, like, even if it wasn't caused by the murder weapon itself, it can still give you information about where the murder happened, what happened before that you can also add into the perpetrator's crimes. I think we're going to talk about bite marks after, but odontology, the study of teeth and their shape, you can, if there's a bite mark on the victim, you can match up teeth shapes. You can find out it's a clue towards like a sexual assault or a sexual motive behind the crime. Acute injuries can be like so helpful.
Yeah, I read this in a book. Not sure if I don't think it can really be used at this point to find someone, but it could definitely be used to convict someone. Maybe is like DNA under the fingernails. You know, if you've like scratched someone and you've got their like skin cells under their finger. I think this probably would be a very rare thing at this point, like, because this book took place, a few decades in the future. But he this character finds out like who attacked him by analyzing the DNA of the skin cells that like he scratched off the person, which obviously you can't do that because we simply don't have everyone's DNA on file. Yeah. So, and at that point in the future they did. But I imagine if you were already in court and you had a suspect, you could run the DNA tests and say, well, it does match or it doesn't match, and therefore this person is or isn't the killer.
You can also do, depending on how hard the victim scratched, you can do blood tests. I don't remember the correct terminology. I'm so sorry to my teacher of forensics, but it's more like broad range piece of evidence, so you can't use it to like specifically pinpoint someone, but you can narrow it down to a group.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
There's it's class evidence. I got there. Yes. It's class evidence. If there's blood under the victim's fingernails that the victim got from scratching the perpetrator, you can find a blood type, which is a group of people, not like a specific person, but it can still like narrow it down if you have other evidence against someone.
Definitely. Like, say you have 3 suspects, one has A type blood, one has B type, and one has AB, and then you find B type blood on the scene, you can say it's got to be the B type. So
you can say that it isn't.
Well, okay.
That's the difference between individual and
I mean,
class
if you knew it, if you knew it was one of those 3,
Right. Yeah. But, if you had other evidence to like support the other sides of it. Yeah. It just you can't rely on just class.
Yeah. I would say that acute injuries are probably the most well-known things that forensic psychologists look at. Like, that's what you see on TV and stuff.
Yeah.
And especially like more like not crime shows, but more actually yeah, I would say mainly crime shows. They always have like whatever nerd up in the lab like looking at the body, and then they have this insane theory, and somehow it's always correct. For some reason all the detectives are in the lab, and they're all standing around the body, and they're like, tell us what happened. And it takes the person like 30 seconds to be like, well, as you can clearly see, the victim's car keys are in his spleen. This means that he is the JFK murderer. They're all like, case closed.
And no one has keys, and they solve the entire murder in like 3 hours.
Yep. But then for some reason, also, the detectives will sometimes like not believe that the character and just be like, oh no, you're crazy.
Exactly. Or they say something so general that you're like, what? They're like, we found dirt on his shoes, and the guys are like, it was the mayor.
That must be. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god,
it is interesting though.
In crime shows makes me so angry, so angry.
The what in crime shows?
Like just like generic run of the mill like detective TV crime show thing.
Yeah.
They'll like just saunter up to a crime scene with no gloves and no protection and just touch things.
Yeah.
Like that's not how that works.
Start
like, you don't want to implicate yourself.
Yeah. Or just like straight up take something and just like take it home.
Yeah. It is interesting about what you said, Sebastian, about like dirt on their shoes, because I'm pretty sure that you could analyze like the composition of the soil, right, to like pinpoint a location. Like that, I find that pretty interesting.
That was actually done in Rango, which is a fantastic movie.
Oh yeah.
And it was actually the mayor. Now that I think about it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. That was a good movie. I watched that like a few months ago when I had COVID.
I watched Rango probably like twice a month, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's not even an exaggeration. I watch that movie often. I love that movie.
It is a good movie. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Over on to toxicology.
Yeah.
The
so
study
this
of
is.
Reddit. Please.
Or Twitter.
Or Twitter, yeah.
The internet in general. This is the study of, well, things that are toxic, right? Of poison and just stuff in the blood, right? You can probably say it better than I can.
It's any components in the blood that aren't really supposed to be there. Or actually, it might just be like a study of like what's in the blood, because I think toxicology also refers to like how many white blood cells there are.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you get. I have watched enough medical dramas to know they'll say like, "Well, bring me the toxicology report."
Yeah, don't quote me on that because I'm not completely sure of it.
Yeah, so it's poisons, but it can also be natural toxins. Like if you have a ton of like urea in your blood, that says your kidneys are not functioning properly. So, and that's not like
what medications you've taken in the past like 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So this is obviously very useful for, investigating a crime, because it can tell you what was happening, like if there were drugs or something else involved. Generally, this is applied to the victim, I guess, because, the perpetrator has gotten away. But it could also be applied to a perpetrator, I imagine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how useful it would be.
The first thing that I was thinking of, like, a much smaller crime of, like, driving not sober. You could get a toxicology report on the driver to see what exactly was in that person's blood to see just how severe the crime was. Or if it even was a crime at all, because I think there's like only a certain... You get arrested if there's like a certain amount of alcohol in your blood.
Yeah. Definitely. It's well, so there are two things. There's a DUI and then there's a DWI. And the DUI is specifically blood alcohol level above 0.08, but DWI is if your blood alcohol level is 0.04 and you're driving like a madman, they're going to charge you with that. They're going to say, well, it didn't meet that specification, but you were clearly driving dangerously.
Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Well, it wasn't
Man,
the alcohol, but something was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Buddy.
Yep. So yeah, that's their sort of like cop out one where they're like, okay, well, we couldn't get it the easy way, so we're gonna have to prove this the hard way. But yeah, so toxicology, very interesting. And then there's oftentimes in crimes there are more heavy drugs involved in the incident, and that can be useful. Like I imagine, if you'll get like gang related crimes and stuff like that, I imagine the drugs can be useful because it says, drug dealers and all that sort of stuff, like what's going on. Like it can tell you, I imagine if the victim, say, has like, I don't know, like methamphetamine in their system, it could say, okay, they were probably addicted to methamphetamine and the killer could have been their dealer. So we have to find someone that deals methamphetamine. So that can be useful.
Sorry, go ahead. You can go ahead.
You sure? Because I have a tangent.
Please, no, please. You're the
Go
expert.
for it.
Okay. So the medication, right? Specifically, like prescriptions. The connection that I immediately just made, like 2 seconds ago. So I haven't gone through all the variations and like figured out all the flaws in my statements. So just keep that in mind. But it would be useful to know what medications I'm thinking in the situation where you know who did it and now you're trying to figure out what to charge them with. If they have been diagnosed with something in the past, and the forensic psychologist might like confirm this, and they had prescription medication that they were taking, and they didn't take it in like that the toxicology report would show that they didn't have it in their system, and that would, I was thinking about like pleading insanity. That would explain maybe some of their actions. Like I'm going down the list of random schizophrenia, I guess, or severe bipolar, like in a manic episode, something like that. If they hadn't taken their medication and it wasn't regulated, they might make different decisions than if they were in their right state of mind. So that would help in deciding what to do with the perpetrator.
Yeah, that is interesting too. That's kind of like an inversion. Usually you're like, good, no drugs in the system. But in this instance, it's kind of the opposite.
Sometimes absence is just as important. Can't speak. Just as important as... Wow, okay, you know what I meant to say.
Yeah. No, so there's a wide variety of things you can use for toxicology. It can help you determine cause of death too. If someone's poisoned, obviously, like if you get to the crime scene and immediately you don't really see any acute injuries, but then it's revealed that, this was a poisoning, like you could find cyanide or something like that. That is sort of interesting. That can, again, it gives you the murder weapon essentially. So who has access to this kind of poison?
Yeah, and if it's something that can be a poison in like large quantities, you can look at a receipt if you have probable cause.
Yeah.
Seb, you had something to say? I need a minute.
It's all good. I wanted to see if there were cases that were solved by toxicology, and the most famous one that I could find was the Jonestown Massacre, which was the poison Kool-Aid. It seems obvious now. We all know what happened, but there must have been a decent deal of toxicology to determine like what the hell actually happened, because they just show up and there's 900 dead people, and they're like, oh boy, something happened here. And they were probably probably was not very difficult to figure out that they drank poison, but you know.
Yeah. But oh my! I just realized they must have had to go through all 900 people.
Yeah.
That's the.
I mean, it is a pretty certain giveaway when all 900 people have, you know, the same poison in their system. You know.
They might. Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, they might have just had to test the cups. Then again, situational evidence is always indicative of cause of death. But what was it? Was it rat poison? Is that?
I think it was just straight up cyanide.
Was it really?
I believe so. Massacre.
Yeah.
Cyanide.
Something interesting about that, where like this sort of overlaps with the last subject, isn't it with cyanide where the lips turn blue? So you can sort of get both just visual evidence, and then also you can see in toxicology that that gives you the more scientific evidence. But
yes.
Sometimes it's like immediately clear. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks like that is one of the symptoms. That's cool. I didn't know.
Sorry, I was looking up the cyanide thing.
God, can you imagine, like, the officers that had to respond to that? They're there and they're like, yeesh, 900 dead people. This is going to be a crazy day at the office. God, am I parched? Oh, hey, look!
Oh, no. How was it found in the first place, though? Like, I don't know, where were they? Were they in, like, a giant building?
Jonestown was like a commune.
A whole town, or
it was a communistic commune. If I remember
a communistic commune.
And there was basically Jim Jones just got up there and was like, "Hey, some people are coming to come and torture us for being communists," or something like that, something along those lines, which was not true. To my knowledge, again, I'm like really paraphrasing here, but he was like, hey, they're going to torture us. We must commit a revolutionary act so that the world will turn into a utopia, or some along those lines. So they knew that there was cyanide in the Kool-Aid. Like, they knew. But he was like, they're going to torture us. So let's get it going. And there were also guards around there who had, like, guns and stuff. So if you didn't drink the Kool-Aid, you're going to just get shot anyways.
Damn.
Not all of them knew that there was cyanide in the cups, though, because some of them were very small children.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so what I wonder is, who was the first person that reported the crime scene? Like, someone just stumbles upon this town, you know, they're out on their morning walk or something. I don't know. Like that, it's just like, oh my God. You just come across like 1,000 dead people.
Was Jonestown discovered?
Jonestown bodies. Leonard Downey Jr., a U.S. military personnel. Oh, wait, no, that's... Oh, they didn't even find all of them at once.
Oh, that's weird. Anyway, we got some chat. I'm going to read. I mean, it's Pascal Hurling says hello. That's it.
Hello, Pascal. So. How you doing?
Hi, Pascal.
Hello. How's it going?
What's up?
Glad you're with us.
Oh, yeah, we just watched Tangled. What's up, my man? Loved you in that.
What?
Imagine having a name that's shared by a Disney cartoon animal. Can't relate. But anyways, we can pop over to the next one.
Anyway, yeah. Here we go. All right. So autopsies. So a lot of this sort of happens in the autopsy, what we were talking about before, the acute injuries and the toxicology. But the autopsy is sort of just about everything. Autopsies are done both in criminal and just medical settings. Sometimes someone in a hospital dies and they don't actually know what happened and they want to figure it out. Autopsies are a good way to do that because, well, pretty obviously, it allows you to more thoroughly investigate the body of the individual, and that can give you information about how they died, because there's only so much we can do with MRIs and stuff like that. You can't really see into a person as well as you can by literally taking someone apart in an autopsy. So autopsies are very useful in specifically murder trials, murder cases, to find out who did it. And you use the similar tactics as they did before. Like, say that immediately when you got to the crime scene, you saw a bruise on someone's arm, but then the autopsy reveals that it was actually like such a severe impact that it broke their bone as well. Like, it broke their arm. It wasn't just like a bruise. That could, again, sort of give you information about the weapon or the strength of the killer, because, it would take a lot of, you'd probably have to be pretty strong to break someone's bone. I don't know how strong you have to be, but it all just gives you information. That's sort of what this is here. It's data collection, so that, and then of course data analysis, which both of the pathology part I would say is like a lot of data collection, and then that's just part of what forensic psychologists will do. You get the data and then you analyze the data, and both are very important. Pretty much the more you can figure out, the better. That's sort of what it is here. The more abnormalities you can note, the more interesting and specific things you can write down, then the clearer picture you will get.
Yeah, there's and there are a lot of different specific ways to, it's kind of off topic, but there are a lot of specific there's a lot of specific terminology that you have to use when you're describing different injuries on an autopsy, because a laceration is you can't just say like a cut. You need to say the specific type. And there's also a lot of terminology for specifically where on the body, because it's not just like midsection or stomach. I don't remember the exact names anymore. It's been a while, but there are like specific names for sections of like midsection. Even that specific. I've said specific way too much in this sentence. I also remember in my forensics class, one of the injuries that took me off guard, that I forgot people could look at, was the victim's eyes were still bloodshot, which later led to like a certain mix of medications, and also alcohol, and also crying. So like, and okay, psychopathic sentence upcoming. My favorite part about this aspect is the what was I gonna say? Nope, it's gone. But I do enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
It's fun to create a scenario, as horrible as the scenarios usually are, but it is interesting to take different pieces of information and try to create a scenario, like what happened, what caused each different piece.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Guess that's all I have to say here.
Yeah, we can pop over to the next one.
All right. So, case files. So what we're going to discuss here, we're going to discuss, I guess, are these all serial killers? Or, well, one of these is just a single murder. These are all murders, let's say.
Yeah.
Some are murderers and others are murder victims here. These are all murder cases, I guess. So, yeah, case files. So we're going to talk about a specific job that the forensic psychologists might have, and this job is specifically more oriented at finding someone rather than all of the post-fact, everything you have to do after. This is about, got a suspect at large, or well, we don't have a suspect, we don't know who they are. We got to figure out who it is. So, yeah. All right. So this is called a criminal behavioral analyst. So a criminal behavioral analyst is a sort of interesting job. It's like often I would say the clearest sort of place you would think of finding it is dealing with serial killers, because serial killers have a lot more of an opportunity to like develop a profile, like to develop different traits that one might expect, because single instances of crime, it's less information to work with. So it's not as, I guess, interesting to portray, right, on screen. That's, you know, we got all those serial killer movies. There's probably too many to count.
And speaking of behavioral analysts, if anyone watching the stream knows about Criminal Minds, that's the most famous media. The behavioral analyst in the media would be probably Criminal Minds.
Yeah, I think of a few months ago I watched Silence of the Lambs. So yeah, Clarice would be a, what is this? Criminal behavioral analyst. Yeah. So with the FBI. So, you know, this is pretty interesting job to have. But again, usually it's not what you would see in TV and movies, because serial killers are fairly rare. Like, there's not that many of them. There's a lot more just single murders. And even in that situation, you got to use the single crime scene to develop a profile. But these are some of the more exceptional cases, being the serial killers.
I'm sure we've talked about this on stream, but the U.S. has like a weirdly high number of serial killers compared.
Yeah, that is strange.
Here, I'm bringing up a list. Number of serial killers.
Like relative to the amount of crimes we have. Because I think
to the number of like people, number of crimes. Okay, so the U.S. has apparently 3,200 serial killers, and the second.
Like in all of U.S. history, or
I think.
On record?
Okay.
On record, yeah.
Caught or just case?
That's a great question. I actually don't know. It seems like caught, because when I go to the Wikipedia list it was derived from, these all actually have names.
Well, it could be names like the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
No, I mean like names like John whatever. Like these are all people that were named.
Okay.
So more than that, because there are also people that we've never found.
But the interesting thing is that the gap is the U.S. is 3,200, and the next one on the list is England with only 166. So that is a great, that's a pretty big jump, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, think of Jack the Ripper. I think that's the one everyone knows.
Yeah.
That is pretty interesting.
Compare percentages, like percent of population.
Yeah, England, or Britain in general, is probably about a fifth the U.S., like 60 million people. So,
not to mention,
I don't think that fully explains the gap.
Area.
You should have around 600 there if it's going to be like one for one. I don't know. Interesting. It would be interesting to see, rather than caught ones, like ones that have happened, like in general. Because this could mean that, like, oh, we're just so great at catching serial killers, guys. Like, but I don't know, you know. But yeah, it is interesting. So.
Like, you can tell. Usually, you can tell that someone that there are serial killings happening because there's a signature. So something that the serial killer keeps consistent in the murders. Because, usually the reason that this person would be serial killing is because there's a compulsion in the brain to do something very specific. So, for example, like branding, if there is a specific symbol left on each person, if they're in a specific position each time, if they're left in a specific place. I remember reading a book a while back where it was like the timing of the murders was special. So like the dates lined up with Max. What's the spiral thing?
Oh, with the golden ratio, the golden
Yes,
ratio spiral.
The dates lined up with points on that. So really, the signature can be anything. The only thing that matters is that it's consistent, and it's not the same thing as like always stabbing the victim, because that's a like mode of killing, and it's not specific enough to be like the special meaning, unless it's like a specific number of stabbings or a specific place.
28 stab wounds.
28 stab wounds.
But yeah. So yeah, there's no. there's no actual, like, in Criminal Minds they call them profilers. That's not the actual name of them. They are just criminal behavioral analysts. It's really interesting because I have a book that talks about why the FBI was created, and I'm pretty sure it got turned into a movie, and I think it's actually decently high budget because I think Leonardo DiCaprio is in it, or it's coming out this year.
I want to watch that.
It's not a movie. It's a no, it is a movie.
Miniseries?
No, it is a movie. It just hasn't come out yet, so they're calling it.
Interesting.
What's it called?
Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah.
I immediately thought of Black Dahlia.
Yeah. It's adapted from the book I have right over there. No, I will not grab it. But it basically, there were these murders around a Native American reservation, and the cops came in and were like, time to do some investigation, and started just breathing all over everything and juggling evidence and like putting their fingerprints all over things and, you know, sneezing over like murder weapons and stuff. And so one guy was like, are you kidding me? This is... So he and some other of his pals, they started the FBI. And I guess that's what the what Leonardo DiCaprio will be doing.
That's fun. Yeah. But yeah, so let's get started on some of these cases so we can sort of talk about examples of all this stuff in action. So we start with the son of Sam, also known as the 44 caliber killer, or David Berkowitz. So this case was in the 70s, and basically every couple of months he would just randomly shoot like two young people in their car. So he would just, in the middle of the night, he would just find two people just sitting in their car and then shoot them with a 44 caliber pistol every single time. And it took them like a year to actually catch him. And so, let's see. So something interesting is that he left letters with the murder victims and then also started sending letters to the press where he called himself the son of Sam. And that sort of led to this sort of investigation once he was caught into his mental state, his sanity, because in the letters he says, you know, I'm commanded by like Sam, which is like Satan or something, some very old entity that is talking through his neighbor's dog, they found out. Like, so obviously, like, this guy, very, you know, like, this can't be happening, right? So like there's got to be something wrong with his mind. But they determined after investigating once he was arrested, They did not allow him to plead insanity. Like they said, oh, he's not insane. Even though, yeah, he's like, oh, my neighbor's dog told me to do this. Well, really, this ancient being talking through my neighbor's dog, which is some pretty crazy stuff. But yeah, again, it was such a heinous crime. They're like, oh, we don't want him to plead insanity. You know, that's part of it. It's like he's getting murder. Something that happened was, yeah, it was just like I watched this like documentary about it, about how New York City was like very fundamentally like concerned about this. Like while it was going on, people were like women were dyeing their hair because he would like it was always brunettes that were getting like targeted, so people would start dyeing their hair or cutting their hair short.
That's what I was talking about with signature. It's always in the car. It's always at the same guy.
Yep.
There's always a letter, and it's always brunettes.
Yeah. So yeah, very interesting sort of thing there. And it's interesting how he eventually got caught was that so most of the killings occurred in the Bronx, but then one occurred in Brooklyn, right? And where he lived was Yonkers, which is, you know, farther away. And apparently when he like committed the Brooklyn murder, he parked in the wrong place and got a parking ticket. So then like some cop who was investigating was like, what's this guy from Yonkers doing in Brooklyn on like this particular night to get a parking ticket? And so then that's how they sort of traced it back to him, which is kind of crazy. Like it was the parking ticket that got him. But yeah, and then there are people that say that he did not act alone, although that has never been confirmed. But that's what the majority of the documentary is about like, was he involved in a satanic cult? That's the question.
Do you know if
kind of seems like it
determined that he like actually believed that the dog was speaking to him, or if that was a story?
I forget. I thought that's like, they didn't go that much into detail, but like that's what he said. Yeah, it was interesting. But the thing is, the neighbor that owned the dog was also named Sam. So then some people were saying like, is this guy implicated? But they don't really know. Or are the guy's sons implicated? It's actually a pretty wild story when you like go into it a bit more. Like basically, the guy next door, who was actually named Sam, had 2 sons and a daughter, right? And the 2 sons ended up dead within like a few months of Berkowitz being caught. So there are people saying, why did that happen? Is that but it's not really relevant to the episode. I just find it pretty interesting.
Have either of you seen Mindhunter?
Nope.
I know about it. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So they have freaky accurate casting. I just want to give them a shout out. They also, I've only watched one episode, and they talked about the Son of Sam so much because, like, he was pretty revolutionary. Because if I'm not mistaken, he was active during the 70s, right? Late 70s.
76.
Yeah. So that
77.
That puts him before Bundy, because I'm pretty sure Bundy was in the either late 80s or I think through the 80s and like maybe late 80s, I don't know. But like the term serial killer wasn't really that popular at that time because it was just more interspersed, and it would just be like, you know, like technically they are a serial killer, but it was only like one event. It was just the body count was high enough for them to technically be called a serial killer, but like methodical killing like Berkowitz did or Bundy did, that stuff like wasn't really seen. And you know, Berkowitz comes first and he does all this stuff. And I haven't seen the documentary yet, so maybe you can speak to this a little bit, Max. But the FBI kind of like evolved because of this case, because it was so strange that they had to kind of shift gears a little bit to account for it.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, the FBI actually wasn't really involved. It was mostly the NYPD. At least that's what they said in the documentary. The documentary is more so. It's really just so it's like a 4-part thing. I've watched 3 of the parts, and it's really just the first part that talks about the case itself. The next 3 parts go over this like journalist guy's like theory that he's like connected to a satanic cult, which is all convincing but not confirmed, right? But it is sort of interesting. It definitely like changed how the media operated, or at least occurred during a change in how the newspapers operated. Because he wrote his like the way he communicated with the public was through the media, which was really interesting. And people were criticizing the guy, like Beslin or something, that got the letters for publishing. Like he published the letters and then sent them to the police. Like he got letters from a serial killer, and he's like, "Oh, okay. The first thing I got to do is publish this, right?" So people were like criticizing that. And yeah, once Berkowitz was caught, like everyone in New York was just like, "Oh, finally it's over," because New York was going through like some rough times in the 70s. I mean, it almost went bankrupt, right? So yeah, it was an interesting sort of way that it affected like the psyche, I guess, of the people of New York.
I just want to do a side by side here with the guy in Mindhunter. They found to play him, and his mugshot over here.
Yeah. Another interesting thing I'll just add,
like casting.
Yeah, another thing I'll add is that
they got. Look at that.
Wow. Yeah, that actor.
God.
That is disturbingly accurate.
That's crazy. Yeah, something else interesting that you bring up the face is that the police, every time that there were, victims that survived or witnesses, they would obviously have them talk to a sketch artist, and they would develop a sketch of like, what does this guy look like? And each sketch was like significantly different than the last. That's another thing about this theory. Like the sketches didn't end up really matching up well to Berkowitz. So, but they say, I sort of agree with this, that eyewitness testimony tends to be fairly like sketchy, but it's people believe eyewitness testimony a lot more than they should, I guess.
It's actually extremely unreliable because of the way that the brain works.
Yeah.
Our brains take clues that we see or think we see, and most of the time our brains fill in the gaps on their own. So most of the time when we look at things, we see like bits and pieces, and then our brain fills in the rest based on logic and what we've seen before. So especially if someone is like not really paying attention, or in a high stress situation, it's really unreliable. And the brain also focuses in on certain movements and certain things, which is why like magic tricks work, and illusion. So it's difficult to like prove even to yourself that what you saw is what you saw. It's useful if you have like a group of people that haven't interacted that say that they saw something. But even then, it's difficult to. It's not a reliable source.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is one sort of case.
Yep. So over to the next one. Ted Bundy, perhaps one of the most famous, I would say.
Bundy. Yep.
I would say the number one thing that everyone talks about with Ted Bundy is like how charming he was. I guess that's what everyone focuses on, because like, some people think that he's handsome. That happened during the case's proceedings because he himself was a law student, so he would often just like not like testify for himself, but kind of like represent himself in court. And he was very well spoken because of all of his like experience in the legal field. He was an active member for like the GOP and stuff like that, so he was very good at public speaking and stuff like that. And he lived like a pretty innocent life, I guess you could say. He lived with his girlfriend, who later became his fiance, and he helped raise her kid, and like you wouldn't really suspect anything of it. I watched the it has the long title, The Evil, Horrifying, and Shockingly Vile, or whatever that one is, the Ted Bundy movie. I probably butchered that title, but that is based off of what the judge said to Ted Bundy as he was convicted, or as he was found guilty. And like Zac Efron played him in that movie, which is like weird, but he did a weirdly good job. So props to Zac Efron, I guess. Words I never thought I'd say. But yeah, no, he really did a great job. I would honestly, I've seen it twice.
Yeah. So what happened in this case exactly? Like, give us a rundown of that.
So at first, Ted Bundy was, I'm not sure if he lived in Seattle or suburbs of Seattle, but he operated mainly on the West Coast, and his like method of, it was always women. He always killed women. His method that he's probably the most famous for was he would walk around with a cast around a park, and he would ask young women to help him load furniture into his car or something, like load something into his car, or load like a boat and attach it to his car or something like that. And so they would like walk off with him, and then he would, you know, attack them and do stuff. He also broke into a sorority house and killed a couple of women there. So, you know, he only targeted women. I believe he did have like a specific type of woman that he would target. They were all college educated from what I remember. They were all brunettes from what I remember.
I think I know why they were all college educated.
What's that? Why is that?
So he, every single person that he killed, as far as I know, he raped beforehand, and sometimes afterwards. He was a power control killer, so he, the main compulsion and reason he had for doing any of what he did was control over the person that he was doing this to. So he probably wanted college educated so that it was like a higher level of control. He wasn't controlling someone he considered to be stupid. He still thought that they were lesser than him, but it was, I don't know, probably more like a challenge to him. Or a way to assert his superiority even further.
Yeah. So
how did he end up getting caught?
Yeah. There were a couple of sketches around, again, from eyewitness stuff. There were a couple of eyewitnesses from when he walked around with a cast. So from that, they were able to determine that, and from other DNA evidence, they were able to determine that he was male. He was younger, not middle-aged, and they had like a basic sketch of him. But he was pulled over in Utah, I believe. So like almost a little similarly to Son of Sam, where he was like out of place, and it was very strange for him to be in Utah. And he had like not to like make light of it, but he had like these stereotypical things you would expect a serial killer to have, like a ski mask and gloves and like a hammer, stuff like that. And like the cop, of course, asks him why he has all this stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I was, going skiing with a hammer, and the cop remembered it, and then he, like, in his mind compared it to like the sketches, so he brought him in just on a hunch, and then more and more evidence started coming out against him. He actually like escaped from custody once or twice, and that didn't help his case that much. He also would regularly yell at his lawyers that they weren't doing a good enough job, and but the most damning piece of evidence was the odontology. With the teeth, he happened to bite one of his victims, and Bundy bit her pretty hard enough to leave an imprint, and he had like a chipped tooth and stuff, so they were able to just compare it to his actual teeth, dental records. And
he had a very specific mouth shape, the way that his teeth were, like more than normal, so it worked especially against him because of that.
So yeah, I would say that was definitely the most damning piece of evidence about him. But what everyone talks about is his impact on the American public, because he started getting like fan mail from all these women and stuff, and everyone, or not everyone, but there were a lot of people who were like, Ted Bundy's innocent and stuff like that, or like everyone who was like around the area would, like, they were just flooded with stuff about Ted Bundy, because it was like the case of the decade and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's interesting, because that reminds me about the Son of Sam, that it resulted in laws being put on the books that a criminal cannot benefit from the publicity around their crimes, called Son of Sam laws. So yeah, it is this weird, like, strange phenomenon where like high profile murderers will end up getting a sort of notoriety, and that sucks, because then you end up with, like, I think it's called copycat killers, right? That are after sort of getting the same kind of publicity, which is very strange.
That also reminds me vaguely of the Luca Magnotta case, but really quickly, still on Ted Bundy. So he was manipulative, non-empathetic, narcissistic, self-centered, believed himself superior, wanted power, wanted control, and had a sexual aspect to his. Was he a psychopath?
Yeah, he's probably one of the most famous psychopaths of all time.
Yeah, that checks out. So those would be like the little clues that you would see, right? He would tell his lawyers that they weren't doing enough, because he was also studying law, and he thought that he could do it better. That's a key towards narcissism, especially because he's not in control of his own situation, so he's getting irritated. He wants to be the one at the top, and I think he bit her on the back, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So that means that he would have had to have been behind her, which implies that he had her in a very controlled, compromising position. So that adds to that. Like there are little bits and pieces that contribute to seeing what his state of mind is, how he thinks, how he makes his decisions, and that's the forensic psychology part. You can take autopsy results, toxicology, the behavior of the perpetrator, the behavior of the victim sometimes, and they make a picture.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty picture, but it's a picture that is very useful.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there is one of the worst people ever.
Dahmer.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, is Dahmer next?
Yeah.
Oh,
so yeah,
boy.
tell us what happened to her.
Camilla, do you want to take this one? Or do you want me to take it?
So Jeffrey Dahmer was a cannibal. Probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous.
Yeah.
He's in a Kesha song.
What?
Yep.
What?
Guess what the song's called?
Cannibal?
Cannibal.
What?
That's not a joke.
God, that's horrible.
Yep. But yeah, so he I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about him, but I do know that he was a cannibal, and I do know that he was not, like, he was a strange person even outside of that. He was not, like, as opposed to Ted Bundy that we were talking about before, he led a seemingly normal, calm life. From what I remember, Jeffrey Dahmer was a little bit less, like, run-of-the-mill human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was, like, he did just the weirdest things with the bodies, which gave, you know, the people doing the autopsies, the forensic psychologists, like, a field day. Like, one of them, he just drilled a hole into one of their heads and just filled it with hydrochloric acid. Like, that's just completely insane and stuff like that. But the thing is that he didn't repeat that at all. He was just kind of throwing things at a wall to see what would stick. And you know, he was he targeted men around
right,
gay bars.
he only killed men and boys.
Yeah.
I did know that. I remembered that.
And but you know, he ate them. I don't know how he was caught. I'm looking at that right now. But yeah, I would definitely say it was someone that escaped from him. This guy, Tracy Edwards, escaped from him after noticing a foul odor and several boxes of hydrochloric acid on the floor, and a 57-gallon drum in the corner.
Dang.
So he got out of there after Dahmer actually tried to assault him, it looks like, and he led the cops to Dahmer's house.
Yeah, because he was a sex offender also on top of all of this. I'm pretty sure.
There's a lot of stuff, and there's more stuff being made media-wise about Dahmer. I think Evan Peters, who you might know as Quicksilver from, like, there's the two Quicksilvers, the one that hangs out with, like, the Avengers, and then there's the one that hangs out with Wolverine. That's how I think about it in my mind. The X-Men are owned by Fox, or were owned by Fox. I think Disney now just owns both of them. But
Disney owns everything.
Yeah. Fox. So the Fox Quicksilver.
Yeah, announcing Disney has just purchased the Gravity Max line. Brought to you by Disney. Yeah.
But he's also an American Horror Story, but he is going to be playing Jeffrey Dahmer in an upcoming thing. So we will see more of that. From other things I've seen, it seemed like he, again, like, these guys are the reason why textbook things are textbook. He would, you know, torture small animals, birds, I think, and he would, you know, mess around with all sorts of, like, you know, like, subhuman things like cats and birds and stuff like that. Then he moved on to humans, which is like a very telltale sign that someone is a psychopath or has antisocial personality disorder, stuff like that.
It's
so
one of the three common ones.
Yeah. So again,
in the bed. What's the third one?
The
Wait, what was the third one?
I don't know.
Oh, also he was found legally sane in his trial, but hold on.
That's interesting. But definitely a landmark case.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
a lot
what
of
happened?
The ones we have up here are like staples.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fire setting, that's the third one.
Right. I'm pretty sure, he was killed by a inmate, one of his fellow inmates.
Something about his head.
These two guys just bludgeoned him in the head. But I don't know specifically what changes were made in the law or what laws were created in response to this, but I would say he's definitely one of the more well-known killers, right up there with the other two we talked about. And he has those glasses, man. Those are the Jeffrey Dahmer glasses.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's very interesting because those glasses are just the glasses that everyone wore in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it seems that Dahmer operated later than that, but still had those glasses. So now they're known as Jeffrey Dahmer glasses, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like imagine a trend from today, and then there's some murderer that still uses it 20 years later, and then it becomes associated with that. Like, that's pretty interesting. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. Think of any trend in recent memory. But yeah, so yeah. So they determined him legally sane. So how did they how did they do that? Like, I don't know, what's the standard?
No idea.
Okay.
I don't know what legally sane means, but I'm not sure how much it has to do with like sadistic tendencies. So most of the things that he did were either like sexual abuse or physical abuse or both.
Mm-hmm.
And almost all of it had sadistic intent behind it. But I don't know if sadism directly correlates to legally sane or not. I don't know the definition well enough to say that.
Yeah, I think it has more to do with if you knew what you were doing. It doesn't matter how insane your motives were, because again, back to the Son of Sam killings, it's like he knew he was murdering people. That's the important part. Not that he thought he was murdering them for the sake of a 6,000-year-old entity, right? That's what's important in the case, you know.
All right, that makes sense.
Oh, and you know what's crazy? Berkowitz is still alive.
Yeah.
Like in prison. So, and it's so strange. Like New York state law requires that he has been getting parole evaluations every 2 years since 2002, and I'm just like, oh dear God,
they just keep
don't give him parole,
right?
please. Yeah, he keeps getting denied, obviously, but every 2 years it comes up again, parole.
Every 2 years a chill goes across New York.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
The dog must have died by now, so maybe, I don't know, maybe he's
alive. Oh
yeah. Do not quote me on that.
Do not quit.
Please keep that man in jail. I like New York the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. I like New York the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just preface every single sentence in this entire stream with "Don't quote us." on any of this.
Yeah.
But all in all, Dahmer was sentenced to like life imprisonment plus
Mm-hmm.
an insane amount of years. Dahmer
Mhm.
sentenced 15 consecutive life sentences. Awesome. So, before he's eligible for parole. So when he gets reincarnated for the 16th time, we will see if he is granted parole.
Yeah, exactly. Oh gosh.
Yeah, so another one of probably one of the worst human beings in American history. And he's not going anywhere, especially because he is dead.
Yep.
But
Yes.
for his next 14 or so reincarnations, they're not going anywhere either. The cops are going straight to the hospital and just chucking the baby in just solitary confinement.
Yeah. No, imagine if we had the capability to like reincarnate or resurrect people.
Mm-hmm.
And so then a sentence like 15 life sentences actually meant you will now serve 15 life sentences.
We talked about that in like season 2. Do you remember that? It wasn't reincarnation and stuff, but it was the drug that made you perceive the passing of time as much slower. So you could actually give people 1,000-year sentences and have it only actually be
that's so interesting.
Like 5 years, which is crazy.
Oh my God.
The main reason to give someone 15 life sentences, just so everyone knows, is so that they can't get parole, because parole often happens, say, like halfway through your sentence. So if you just say, like, go to jail for 500 years, you know, they're not going to get parole for 250 years, so you can rest easy. It's basically a way of saying no parole. Just stay in there forever, no probation, no nothing, no good behavior, just stay. We don't want you here. You're not getting out. That's the purpose of that.
It's just a sit and stay statement.
Yeah.
But I think that is enough about Mr. Dahmer. If we want to go on to the Zodiac Killer, who apparently can't spell, because they just cracked one of his like, this is old news, I'm well aware, but they cracked one of his ciphers about 2 months ago. And I think he misspelled paradise. He spelled it with a C. But
to be fair, I have probably made that mistake more times than I've spelled it correctly on the first try.
Are you the Zodiac Killer?
Yes, in the 60s and 70s, I was involved. No.
Book 'em, boys.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can't pin anything on before 2004. You can't pin anything on me. So, yeah, there you go.
You wait and see.
You wait and see. What? Oh no, I was Jack the Ripper. Just like, yeah.
Your American accent is flawless.
Yeah, thank you.
I love that Max was like, you can't convict me of anything before I was born, and Sebastian's response was literally just bet.
Yeah, watch me try. Yeah.
Literally, is that charming?
Wait, I think this is also before my parents were born. Yeah, these are all the murders here.
Are you saying your grandfather was the Zodiac Killer?
Of course. Yeah. Here we go.
The old shift the blame to granddad trick, eh?
What?
Never works.
Rat. Anyway, so the Zodiac Killer is interesting because he was never caught. And there's 5 confirmed dead, 2 injured, and some say up to like 37, like, 20 or 30 murders total, some believe to be associated with the Zodiac Killer, but of course it is not confirmed. So what do you guys know about Zodiac Killer?
I know that he sent letters to the police. Because he sent letters to the police, he wanted he was probably an organized killer. He wanted attention for. He wanted attention. I don't think it went far enough that he wanted, like, what is the word? For when you, like, when you did something and you want people to know that it was you that did it, like why you put copyright.
Like notoriety?
I guess. I don't think he wanted that because
Trademark.
he never said who he was. But...
Clout.
Clout.
Yeah. No, that is an aspect though. Some serial killers will, once they get caught, sometimes they won't even like try to sort of fight it because they'll just be like, "Yeah, you got me."
Credit. That's the word.
Yeah,
they wanted.
I
don't think he didn't want credit, but he wanted to be noticed. He wanted. He wasn't the type of killer to try and hide everything that he was doing, because that wasn't why he was doing it. Part of the compulsion in his killings was something to show the world. Like he needed to be known, which is why it's kind of ironic that he's one of the most famous killers, because we gave him what he wanted.
Exactly.
But
he also grossly overstated his kill count, if I'm remembering correctly. Like he claimed that he'd killed people.
That's why there's
but it's estimated that it would have only been like possible for him to have killed, I think, maximum of like 8 people, 8 to 10, and only of those have there been 4 confirmed victims. Let me check that.
Well, yeah, it's difficult because you can sort of say, since you haven't caught him, you can say, all right, any unsolved murder from the late 60s in the California area, maybe it could be the Zodiac Killer as well.
Yeah, he claimed to have committed 37 murders, but there are... Investigators agree on only 7 confirmed victims, 2 of whom survived of 4 different events.
Did they ever confirm that it was just one person?
I'm not sure. Let me see the witness account. But that's a big theory, is that a lot of people think it's two or more people.
Yeah, because then it would be more plausible that more people died, because people can be in different places at once.
There were some eyewitness accounts. Like the sketches that we have up are eyewitness stuff. He's described as white male adult in his early 40s, 5'8", heavy build, reddish blonde, crew cut hair, wearing eyeglasses, dark brown trousers, a jacket, and dark shoes. That's pretty general.
At least we can say that he's probably dead by now then, right?
Yeah.
Probably.
If he was in his 40s. But if they got that wrong, it's like, oh, he could still be around, just going about. Like, that's crazy though. Regardless, like so he killed a ton of people, and then since he was never found, he just went about his life like a normal person for like the next decades. That's like so crazy how that could even happen.
Unlikely. If he was a serial killer killing based on compulsion, which is likely because he wanted people to know that it was happening, it's very, very rare for a killer to just stop, because it's a compulsion. It's like
but the killings did stop, so like what do you think happened?
Well, we don't necessarily know that the killings stopped. We know the letters did.
Okay.
He might have moved. He literally could have taken a plane to another country, and we wouldn't know, because we didn't know who it was. And the letters stopped. So maybe he was getting that aspect of his compulsion from something else. Maybe he escalated. Maybe he didn't want the police to know. Maybe he, like, wanted specific people to know. Maybe the compulsion changed a little bit. Maybe he died. We don't know. Like it.
I'm pretty sure BuzzFeed Unsolved has one about this. And
do they really?
Yeah.
I mean, probably.
I'm pretty sure.
Zodiac killer, so probably. But yeah, like it's very rare that a killer just stops. So my bet is that he either died or changed location.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they provide a pretty sizable suspect list in that episode, I'm pretty sure. There's also just other videos about him if you don't want to see Shane and Ryan. Just
I'm gonna watch the BuzzFeed Unsolved one because I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah. It's pretty good from what I remember. But there's a wide suspect pool. And again, the thing about this is that people are like when news about the Zodiac broke, just like with Berkowitz and just like with Bundy, terror spreads across like whatever region they're in. Zodiac was in California, so terror across California. But what that leads to is a lot of people calling in false things because it's just it's the creepy guy at work. They read the description, all those things like 5'8", heavy build, red hair, crew cut, and they just see like 2 out of the 4 things that line up at the creepy guy at work, and they're like, he's 5'8" and he's got a crew cut. Come and arrest him. He is the Zodiac. I know this in my soul. He is the Zodiac killer.
It's part of the difficulty of sending
come and get Martin
out to the public, because some people do that. Some people want their 15 minutes of fame and say that they know who it is. Some people it kind of relates back to like what I was saying about eyewitness testimony. The brain fills in things and then latches on to ideas that might, it's evolutionary. It latches on to things that might save their lives. So paranoia is like ingrained into things like this. So it's like when you don't do this, but when people look up different symptoms and then say, oh, I have this, just because like if I had a headache today and suddenly decided that I had a tumor in my brain, like we jump to the worst conclusion a lot of the time. So when the entire public has like a vague description of someone who's done something really, really bad, sometimes it works against the police and not with them.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a tangent. I didn't mean to talk about.
No, that was. Yeah.
But that is the Zodiac killer. There's a profile on him that forensic analysts or forensic psychologists have come out with. Basically everything we said here, like gross narcissists need to be the center of attention. Some form of, I guess, sociopathy or psychopathy. Disregard for human life, I guess is how you could say that. Stuff like that. And probably, honestly, to me, that is equally as important as the sketches that we have in front of us, because this might be...
It's like a mental sketch.
Exactly. It's exactly
a sketch of the mind.
Yeah. 100%.
Because, like, you could also, like, get people based on that,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Zodiac killer. Not a great guy. Apparently, he is a senator from Texas who will not be named. But
wait, I imagine the age thing applies there too.
Yeah.
I guess everyone at this point. I don't think there's anyone still alive. That would probably
born in the 19. There's probably
anyone who was 40. Right, because that was the description 40. So it's like it would have to be someone born in like So Jimmy Carter.
It's Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, there you go. That's just the only person. That's the first person I can think of that's over like it's 96. I don't know who else. I just do not know. There's not that many.
Betty White is the Zodiac killer.
It's the Queen of England.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway,
it's Dick Cheney.
Is that Elvis?
Yeah, that one is that's plausible. That's very plausible that Dick Cheney is the Zodiac killer.
Yeah.
But anyways,
I still love that story of like he shot someone and then that person said sorry for getting in your way.
He's on a hunting trip. He's hunting quail.
Yeah.
And he's out there with his gun, and you know he's sighting down his thing, and his friend like walks by and he's like, "Hey, look at this bird," or whatever, and you know Cheney stands there for a couple of seconds, fires, and his friend gets shot in the head, and Cheney goes over to the hospital after a bit, and he's standing there, and his friend's like, "Hey man, I'm sorry I got in the way of your shot." And Cheney's like, "Don't let it happen again," and he leaves.
Yes.
To be fair, I am that kind of if someone hit me with their car, I'd probably apologize.
You'd probably apologize.
I would probably apologize. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be like in the middle of like I'm getting a surgery
I think this
or
happened
something,
while he was.
I'll tell the surgeon like, "Hey, let me know if I'm doing anything wrong. I'm sorry for being a bother," and they're just gonna look down at me like,
just like you're supposed to.
How do you keep waking up to say that?
How did you wake up in the middle of it? Yeah, exactly.
That's a Tumblr post. That's not my joke. But
oh, okay.
I am that kind of person. I would do that.
All right. So next case.
Black Dahlia. What a doozy. So, Camilla, you might know more about this than I do.
The Black Dahlia.
Start reading through this.
She was she was found in a park in LA. Los Angeles specifically. It's LA. I don't remember exactly which park, but she was found in a park and she was like mutilated. And no one knows who did it. We have no idea what happened. I think she went missing for a while first, and then someone found her in the park. She got cut in half. Like, right here.
Which was deemed to have been done post-mortem.
Yeah. So, someone killed her and then cut her in half. So, someone did not like the Black Dahlia. Also, her name was Elizabeth Short. She was an actress, which was why she was called the Black Dahlia. I forget exactly why. It had something to do with the fact that she was an actress. I think it was it a character or a movie?
I know there was a letter sent to the police which referred to her as Dahlia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it says known posthumously. Like, so I don't think it was.
Oh, okay.
The term may have originated from a film noir murder mystery named The Blue Dahlia. So this is the Black Dahlia.
Yeah. So she was found in the park. She was cut in half. She was naked. She was not wearing any clothing. And someone had carved gashes into each side of her mouth, like the Joker. And I think. Wait, was that her or someone else? No, that was someone else.
How? Yeah. So what did this say? Like, what did the investigators think? Like,
so the most notable thing about the Black Dahlia case is just how absolutely horrific it is. Like how incredibly mutilated she was. Like words can't even like describe it. First of all, being sliced completely in half after you are already dead, obviously it is kind of like a light into the mental state of whoever did this to Miss Short. But other than that, she was like found in a park. They concluded that she was moved there. They found her 10 hours after she had died, or after she had been dumped at the park, something like that.
After she died, they wouldn't have been able to tell very easily, at least, how long she'd been at the park. Other than maybe temperature, but that wouldn't be accurate because she wasn't alive.
Also, there was a suspect named Mark Hansen that I'm just reading now, and he was cleared of suspicion after passing numerous polygraph examinations, which should be a red flag.
That's the only thing.
Wow.
That's the reason they list here. Obviously, we would need to do more research into that, but just the fact that is the headline of that.
So they said this guy didn't do it because he passed a lie detector test?
Okay, that wasn't Hansen. I apologize. That was Manley. Someone named Manley.
Manley. Oh, it was.
What else?
Okay, this was the Black Dahlia. Okay, they someone was mailing the police things that belonged to her.
Yes.
Yeah, that I was thinking about that earlier, but I thought it was someone else. Then I was mixing up the people. No, that was her. Basically, he was taunting them by just mailing them a purse or a shoe or a hair clip, something, whatever.
Another thing is that this was in the 40s, so the technology was not as advanced in terms of. I bet some of that stuff they can do some, DNA. Stuff like that.
That's how they started looking at Mark Hansen too, by the way, because they sent her birth certificate and something that had his name on it. Which is always a fun thing to be sent. The birth certificate of a woman you found cut in half in a park.
The envelope contained Short's birth certificate, business cards, photographs, names written on pieces of paper, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover.
An address book.
But they did find an apparent suicide note that read, "To whom it may concern, I've waited for the police to capture me for the Black Dahlia killing, but have not. I'm too much of a coward to turn myself in, so this is the best way out for me. Couldn't help myself for that, or this. Sorry, Mary." And then they found that next to a pile of clothes.
Weird. And so, but then they didn't find the body of
no body was
this
found.
Guy.
So that might have been just a sneaky way for him to try and dip out, or he actually did commit suicide. Either way, it's still a cold case to this day.
Yeah.
Do we give a year for this? Because this was in the 40s, which should be pretty notable. Because
this is 1947.
1947, yeah.
January 1947.
47.
So much earlier than the other things that we've been talking about by at least 2 decades. And again, this kind of thing, this was just a lone killing as far as we know. And again, the method of killing was so gruesome that, if this was the work of a serial killer, we'd easily be able to tell.
There was a clear signature, especially I think he posed her body too, she wasn't just dumped on the ground.
Yeah,
that was a choice.
There
was a clear signature and a clear level of violence that we probably would have seen more of if he had done it again.
The difficult thing here is that she was something of a celebrity, right? Like, I don't know to what degree, but and that very much broadens the pool of possible suspects, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because a lot more people knew her. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's also interesting because that's also a specific choice, like, that adds to the narcissism profile because someone, like, chose someone that people would notice gone. Like, this is a famous person. People would know if she disappeared. Yeah. And then she was posed on the ground in a public park, cut in half. So they were not trying to be secretive at all. And if they did commit suicide, they specifically committed suicide because no one caught them. They wanted to be known for this, but they didn't want to put the name out themselves.
Yeah.
Man.
But yeah, so definitely easily one of the most horrific murders in American history.
Or at least one of the more famous, horrific, grotesque murders. There have been some messed up things that happened, but
it's very true. But
yeah,
that's that. Over on to our final one, John Wayne Gacy. What a nightmare this guy is. Jesus Christ. So first of all, he was a clown, like, part-time at birthday parties. Clowns are already horrible enough without John Wayne over here playing up as a clown and then murdering at least 33 people. He has 33 confirmed counts of murder.
How did it go that long without him getting caught?
I often draw the one that I compare him the most to is definitely Bundy, because he again lived a very kind of straight by the book life. I think he was a mayor, or he was a notable figure for the Democratic Party. Yes, he was a Democratic Party precinct captain. So he had a chair on his local committee. He was around Chicago, and so he was, like, well known in his community.
He was a politician and he part-timed as a clown?
Yeah, that always seemed weird to me. I think it was...
What?
Like, yeah, I honestly don't know, like, how that plays into it. Like, at 18...
did he use the clown costume as, like, a disguise, or was that separated? Was he not clowning or whatever?
I don't think he dressed like a clown to lure people in, because I doubt that would work. But
I mean more to, like, disguise himself, you know.
Maybe
describe
like...
the suspect, you know, white face paint, red smile, right?
Like,
not gonna help.
Because he was a clown for, like, children's hospitals, so maybe it was more like, yeah, I'm a good person. I do this for people.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, like, because politicians don't, like, have the best reputation for being good people, so he probably decided, hey, I need something to make me seem like a morally decent human being. It is weird that they called him, like, Killer Clown if it didn't have anything to do with his killings, though.
Yeah.
That is a strange... Maybe that was just a media thing? I don't know.
But, so all of his victims were men or boys. he was a sex offender, as well as a pedophile, and how was he caught? Let's find out. Conviction and imprisonment. Well, how did they catch him, though?
Oh, wait, before that, sorry, the clown thing actually did have something to do with how he killed. He would, lure his victim into his home and then trick them into putting handcuffs on under the guise of doing a magic trick.
Wow.
And then he would rape and torture them and then strangle them. And then bury them under the crawl space in his house.
Yeah.
Bold. What the hell?
Yeah. Well, that's got to be like Telltale Heart kind of stuff there. Yeah.
4 of them were thrown into the river, I guess.
So he was arrested in the 70s, I believe. It's not telling me
78.
how he was...
68.
Tonight at 8.
Oh. Well, yeah, that's the thing. He was already arrested for, I guess, rape or as like a sex offender, but then he only served 18 months and got out, and then serial killed from 1972 to 1978.
So he escalated. He went from just rape to rape and then murder.
Jesus, the jury convicted him after less than 2 hours of deliberations. Fast track.
Wow.
Jesus.
Speed run conviction.
How was he caught, though? Like, it's not telling me how he was caught.
Okay, someone who worked at a store left the store to talk about a job, and someone had tipped the police off that it might have been him that he went to talk to. So Gacy, he might have talked to Gacy. And then someone in the police decided to keep investigating him.
And then they searched his house. And then
eventually they found the bodies in the
checked his
crawls.
criminal background first, and then we're just like, yeah, something is not right. Gacy promised to come to the station to make a statement confirming that he'd only gone for he'd gone to the pharmacy to get something and left and didn't do anything. And then it said that he couldn't do it right that second because his uncle just died. And when the police asked him how soon he could come to the station, he responded, "You guys are rude. Don't you have any respect for the dead?"
Interesting. Yeah.
Wow. What? Okay, he got to the police station at 3:20 a.m. covered in mud, saying that he was in a car accident.
That's just...
What happened to this man?
These are just bad excuses every step of the way.
Yeah. What?
So he's less well known than the other guys, but his victim, the number of victims he has is ridiculous because it's 33 people, or 33 counts of murder, because he was still a sex offender. He sexually abused other people more than just the 33. But again, public figure, active in politics, described by people as charming. So, like, this came out of nowhere. Stuff like that.
Oh.
What's O?
He was covered in. Okay, he was covered in mud because that he gets under his crawl space and his crawl space is muddy.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
He panicked in one of the search warrants because he saw a clot of mud on his carpet that he thought came from the crawl space. And someone that Gacy had tried to rape said that he grabbed a flashlight and immediately went down to look for evidence of digging to see if anyone had caught him. And he... I like, there's so much against him, I can't find the exact moment that he got... Oh, he confessed!
He just straight up confessed.
He was brought into the station, asked for an alcoholic drink, was given whiskey, picked up a newspaper article covering, like, one of the people he killed and said, "This boy is dead, he's in a river," and then rambled out everything that he did.
Jeez.
And then where he put them. And
why does he...
was...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, he was just an absolute horrible person when dismissing these people. He just, like, called them hustlers and liars. What the hell?
I was just gonna say, why does he look so distraught in the mugshot on the left, but then on the right he looks like it's just any other day?
He looks like he looked in the corner and saw a spider.
There are two wolves inside you. But yeah, that's Gacy. Like he and the clown thing is one of the things he's most well known for. Just because it's creepy. It just is. It's just how clowns are. But
yeah, sorry to all the clowns out there. I think
I'm reading like the things that this
I don't get the appeal. I'm just gonna say
from the psych profile that we have just from his confessions, he has like zero regard for human life, or at least very little, because he just casually talks about like 30 plus people he murdered, and to be able to do that, there has to be some level of antisocial personality disorder there, and stuff like that.
But he wasn't unempathetic. He felt guilt.
Yeah, so it wasn't complete disregard for human life. But
there was remorse, and he was religious too, so he recognized that it was wrong. He was like praying on the way to being convicted.
Yeah, it's interesting because when the police or psychologists, forensic psychologists, are dealing with murderers, it's necessarily going to be a strange mind. Like, it's not a normal, like, it's not going to be a typical sort of like psychology that they're dealing with, so they have to be very knowledgeable about all the more abnormal things that can happen, right? Like the standard things that apply to like human psychology don't necessarily apply to the serial killers. It's just sort of an interesting thing. Like the phrase, like common sense, things that we think of as common sense. If you are a forensic psychologist, I imagine you can't rely on things like that when determining how a serial killer operates, because the fact that they are a serial killer makes it such that there's probably going to be things different about them,
Yeah, and it even varies further with like the type of serial killer. If it's an organized killer, if it's a disorganized killer, where the murders are happening. Depending on the suspected state of mind of the killer, you have to adjust your way of thinking to theirs so that you can try and figure out what might have been going through their mind so you can figure out what happened. There's a lot of like guesswork almost, but you literally like put yourself in their shoes to figure out what happened because you know, if no one was there, that's the only thing you have. It's the only thing you can do.
Yeah. But right there. So that was the last of the case files we're going to look at. And now we're going to detour a tad bit to Myers-Briggs matches. So for those of you who don't know, the Myers-Briggs personality test separates everyone's personality into 16 distinct categories based on if you are introverted or extroverted, based on it's sensory or intuitive, right?
Yeah.
So I guess how you
like
intake
thinking,
how you make decisions, I guess, or I guess that would more be the last one.
It's decision making, thought process, and like
if you're more emotional or more logical, stuff like that. So we found a horrible list about the Myers-Briggs personality or suspected Myers-Briggs personality types of different serial killers.
But then we interspersed it with Myers-Briggs of people that we like.
Yes.
To give us a more like, you know, positive note, right? So, yeah.
Yes. So, to start, I share a personality type with Ted Bundy. So, that does not mean I have killed people or done anything that Ted Bundy has done.
Because literally every single personality type has had a serial killer of that personality type. So,
I just happen to get one of the most notable ones, I guess. So, I'm an ENTJ. I might also I might walk the line between ENTJ or ENTP, because in my mind I always knew that I would get the quote unquote debater personality type, and that is actually ENTP. So you know, somewhere in the middle of those, but it's actually hysterical because there's a chart of the ideal matches, and Max and I were looking at this, the ideal matches of different Myers-Briggs like compatibility for like relationships, either working relationships or otherwise. And if I'm an ENTJ, my ideal match is Camilla's personality type, which we'll get into. And if I'm an ENTP, my ideal match is Max's personality type. So whichever way I actually am,
we're a good trio.
I'm in the right place.
Woo! Love that.
I am in the right place. But it's pretty great.
It's really funny.
Synergy time.
That's team synergy.
Synergy. Just the word synergy always makes me laugh.
Oh my god.
But
it's the new like corporate type of spirituality, which is a strange sort of things to put together, but it is. I feel like I want to make a whole thing about synergy, but anyway.
So as an ENTJ, the E is for extroversion, the N is for being more intuitive rather than sensory, the T is being more thinking than feeling, and the J is being more like judgmental over being more perceptive. You know, when I feel like I've kind of like changed as like a personality type as I've gotten older, which should happen to most people. But that being said, I've gotten the same result for the Myers-Briggs test over the like past 5 to 6 years. When I was a kid, I was definitely an introvert, absolutely. But then I probably figured out that you can make a lot more money as an extrovert, so here I am. But stuff like that, I get energy from other people. So, like, being around a lot of people, I can, like, catch a vibe, quote-unquote, off of them, and I can enjoy myself in social situations with a large amount of people, and I'm in debate club, so a lot of public speaking, stuff like that. That also plays into the T, the thinking over feeling, stuff like that, even though that goes against my status as a Cancer male. If we're going back to zodiac stuff,
astrology.
Yeah. I would say.
What happens when these two things conflict? Like what?
Honestly,
what
I would say
do?
ENTJ is probably the farthest possible personality type than what you would expect from someone with the star sign of Cancer, because Cancers are supposed to be crying little bitch babies who can't handle their own emotions.
I want to see a graph of most common personality type versus astrology month.
Yeah.
Just to see. Just like.
So we gotta make that.
We gotta make.
You have to do it. Like I want to see. I want a real study on it, though. You know what I mean? I want an actual study, because obviously we can think of
let's see what star sign was Ted Bundy. Something.
The study will probably give you nonsensical results, right? But because that would be my hypothesis. My hypothesis would be you will see no correlation. But
because
I would be very intrigued if you
look
did.
at this.
Yeah.
He is a Sagittarius, and a Sagittarius is exactly what you would expect an ENTJ or an ENTP to be, based off my own limited knowledge of both areas. Although it should be said that my rising sign is Sagittarius, but we'll just forget about that for a second. But, so right there, practically opposite signs. Sagittarius is a fire sign, Cancer is a water sign, and me and this individual share a personality type.
I'm realizing, like, as you're going through these, that this is a really good example of what I was talking about earlier, the class evidence thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're gonna go through a bunch of people, and, like, it's a little surprising, because like, there's only 16 of these combinations. And, a lot of people can fit within that gap, and everyone fits in one at least of them. So it just because someone fits into one of these doesn't mean that they are like the exact same person as someone else with the same label.
I should hope not.
Yeah.
I was being general, but yes. Ted, you're not Ted Bundy.
Thank you. That's the best compliment I've gotten all week.
That's such a low bar. Oh my god.
Anyways, I would like to move off this slide of just a picture of Ted Bundy with just Sebastian above.
I feel the exact same way about.
On a much more uplifting note, hero, astrophysicist, poet, author, writer, scientist Carl Sagan is also an ENTJ, as is the general consensus. I doubt. As Carl Sagan was like mapping the stars, he took the Myers-Briggs test, and I doubt that while Ted Bundy was doing what he does, he was like, I should take that Myers-Briggs test. Let's see what I'm doing.
I don't know how long Myers-Briggs has even been around. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I imagine it's just recent. But.
That's a good thing to note, that this is based on a large amount of speculation. There's actually a decently strong community behind the Myers-Briggs types that we all found before the stream. Like, there's Reddit or subreddits and stuff like that, and like terminology that we were looking at. So it's just a consensus of people in that community is what we're basing this off of, and the overwhelming consensus for Carl Sagan is that he falls into this group. But, you know, Carl Sagan, loved to teach, loved to learn. I definitely feel like I am much more similar to Carl Sagan than I am to Ted Bundy. What a sentence. But
yeah,
it goes to show, you like Carl Sagan. Did he win a Nobel Prize for science?
I think I forget. No, this is a great riddle to just go up and ask someone. Just like ask any random person, Sebastian, the next time you see them. What do me, Ted Bundy, and Carl Sagan all have in common? And they will just be like, I have no idea. Right? Like that.
Hey, I bet you $5 you can't answer this riddle.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There are two wolves inside you. One is Ted Bundy, the other is Carl Sagan.
Which wolf wins? Whichever one you
on any given day, I either wake up Ted Bundy or I wake up Carl Sagan.
Oh no.
No, I do not. That's a fallacy. Every day I am Carl Sagan.
Yes.
He did win a Nobel Prize for the discovery that mutations can be induced by X-rays.
Wow. So right there.
Did he?
So
no.
Okay.
This lies to me.
It lies.
It lies.
He was definitely.
I can't believe that.
He was definitely nominated for one. Like, there's no question.
I never thought that. You never think about certain things that have to be discovered. I just imagine that before that discovery, people were just, going through the X-ray for fun, just like, haha. Oh yeah, look
at my bones.
Oh, it's so funny. And then they're just like, oh no.
Is that a third hand?
Yeah, exactly.
He got a Distinguished Public Service Medal, the Pulitzer Prize for General Nonfiction.
So he's just also one of the most highly awarded astrophysicists of all time. So you have that spectrum, like one of the worst people in American history, and then you get one of the most highly decorated astrophysicists of all time.
Yeah, there's an award named after him.
Yeah, exactly. So
the Carl Sagan Award for Public Understanding of Science.
Falling into the same category.
Yeah, no, he was also a very important science communicator. He had a TV series, Cosmos. So.
Yep, absolutely. So that should be your takeaway on my personality type.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Sake. Yeah, take away the second ones here.
Yeah.
For all of us. All right.
On to Camilla.
Yeah.
This is Herbert Mullen, who murdered 13 people in the Santa Cruz area. And he did this because he believed it would stop earthquakes.
Yeah.
This is Camilla's personality type.
Yeah, I'm not.
So, INFP, again, I is introversion, N is intuition, F is feeling, and P is more perceiving. I forgot what the little catchphrase for this, like the character that they bring up.
I'm the mediator.
Mediator.
That's right.
Yeah. That's. I feel like all these are accurate. I like these.
Yeah.
That is accurate. The mediator.
No, because I did not kill. Like.
No. I mean the little labels. Each of these types has a sort of like label. Sebastian's is what, the debater, right?
The debater.
Yeah.
And so then yours is the mediator. Yeah. Mine is the architect. So.
Yeah, fitting. So yeah, I'm an introvert. I don't get energy from hanging out with people. I love my friends and I hang out with them a lot, but
we are all just drained right now.
Yeah, sometimes I need like a solid 3 or 4 hours, depending on how long I've been in social situations, to like literally recharge. I like to call it my social battery because it feels like you're recharging a battery, because it's fun to hang out with people, but it's kind of like exercising for a really long time. You do need a break sometimes. Intuition is pretty self-explanatory. Feeling is also self-explanatory. But it has gotten better. I used to let my emotions control a lot more. I've gotten better at that. And what was P?
Perceiving over
Perceiving.
judging.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also pretty self-explanatory.
Also, it can also be called as perceiving or judging and prospecting instead of perceiving.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's like seeing facts versus theoreticals, I guess. Is that what that is?
Yeah, I think so.
It says it's a tactic about how you approach work, planning, and decision making.
People who tend to focus on making decisions have a preference for judging because they tend to like things decided. People who tend to focus on taking in information prefer perceiving because they stay open to a final decision in order to get more information.
Oh, hell
Camilla,
yeah. That's
how many times have you guys had to derogate it to me for me to make the decisions?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Literally every day, every single decision. And anytime like anyone like brings a story to me like, hey, this is what happened, or like, what should I do about this? The immediate first step is like, okay, tell me everything that happened. I need every piece of information before I can say anything at all. Like it. Yep. Oh my god, that.
And I make decisions like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just come on, let's go. I want that one. No, that size. I need it in this color right now.
Man, I can't do that. Yeah. I physically cannot do that. I need as much information so I can make an educated decision, which sometimes goes against me because there is never enough information. But you know.
True.
So yeah, that. Can we switch?
Yeah, you want to go to the next one?
You know, let's all just breathe it in.
We not actually.
Vincent Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am also
Vincent.
This man.
So.
Which. So that if I remember correctly, INFP people also do tend to be pretty creative in general.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, it was all I looked up for like it was like list of celebrities X personality type, and it was like I forget now. It was all like either musicians, artists, or actors. So
Shakespeare was in there.
Yeah, Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. But yeah, so that tracks. That makes sense.
Camilla is a very good artist. And whether that is derived from her personality type or from her God-given skills.
This is probably because I doodle on everything instead of doing my homework.
Right there.
Yep.
Or your general diligence. They all come together to make you a good artist.
Thank you.
Nice.
And Vincent van Gogh was pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
He was Dutch.
Got shot in the ear.
No, he cut off his ear. He got shot in the chest.
Oh, he cut off his ear? He didn't get shot? Who got shot?
He did get shot. He shot himself.
He did get shot? Oh!
Wait. I knew he cut off his own ear. Why did...
I was like, oh.
Van Gogh did some interesting things. I didn't know that he shot himself. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's the theory. That because he gets shot in a meadow, and then he was walking. He got shot in the chest, but it didn't really hit an organ at first. So he was kind of just walking around after being shot, but he didn't go to a hospital. He didn't go to any of that. So it wasn't like someone shot him, and he had been, in a mental asylum. And he had been known to eat paint and stuff, so he had a lot of suicidal tendencies. So it's theorized that he just kind of shot himself.
So he was just walking around with a bullet wound?
Yeah, there's a BuzzFeed Unsolved on Van Gogh as well. But that's the most commonly accepted theory.
Interesting.
Okay.
But Very well respected artist.
Yes.
Very, very
Very
good.
well. Very,
Yeah.
Very good art. I really, really like his work.
Yeah.
A lot.
Max Rudin is the Unabomber.
Yeah, I was waiting until you.
You heard it here first, folks. You see that
INTJ.
man in the top right corner and that man center screen? One and the same.
I don't like it. INTJ, yeah, introverted, the type that would enjoy cabin in the mountains or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's what he did, right?
Yeah, he was in Montana, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and then all the ones we said before. I think we've talked about each things.
You just want to get off this slide.
Yeah, fine. Well, intuitive, whatever Mill said. I again, with the Myers-Briggs thing, I don't know how into it I am, how invested I am.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it feels like, astrology to me.
Yeah.
A little bit. But I guess whatever, it's workflow and synergy. Yeah.
And like we were saying before stream, you were probably the exact opposite of the Unabomber based on your views on like technology.
Yeah, because I like technology. Yeah. I am very much tech positive. But I guess I could see the sort of just sitting alone and thinking about things. Like I imagine that guy did a lot of that.
Yeah.
So
Probably.
just not about the right things, not about good things. So yeah, because
think
another person that did a lot of sitting alone thinking about things was Isaac Newton. And that's another one of those.
Isaac Newton.
So yeah, and now that I've mentioned that Isaac Newton did a lot of that, I also kind of do a lot of that. Just sitting alone thinking and writing, which is a common trait between both Isaac Newton and the Unabomber. So yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of writing, you know what everyone should go get, right?
Oh yeah, my book. I don't talk about the flaws of industrial society, if that's what you're into. So
no, I just wanted to plug it.
So I have a different book to recommend you there. Yeah.
Oh boy. Your book, and this is how you were paying.
Thank you for the
plug. It should also be noted that on that same list that gave all the serial killers personality types, we were all in like the lowest bracket of chances of being a serial killer for both male and female. So,
yeah.
None of us are serial killers. Really. Confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it, guys.
Yay.
Woo. We made it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no, you know what I was just reminded of? Myers-Briggs, but Divergent Society. Ooh. Like from the book series.
Oh.
Isn't that just what that book series
is?
It
is.
It's just
it really
it's just the Myers. It's just the Myers-Briggs person. That's why I can't like fully buy into these sort of things, because I'm like, it just seems so like, how can you categorize people like that easily?
You can't.
But
labels
exactly.
Labels mean nothing, but sometimes they can be helpful because they make people feel less alone.
Yeah. That is fair. Yeah. So now we each have an interesting question to ask people, which is, what does me, bad person, really, really bad person, and really, really good person have in common?
Yeah.
So that's just a funny thing. Anyway.
On to the legal system.
Yep. So a lot of forensic psychology, instead of taking place pre-crime or during investigations actually occurs post-crime and post-apprehension. It's just, it doesn't make for very good TV. That's all it is. So you won't really see it that much. But there is, I would say, a lot more that is actually done behind the scenes. And there's actually some pretty important stuff that is related to forensic psychology.
Yeah. So, forgot that was you can very clearly tell which slides were made by which person.
Yeah, I usually start from the front. Sebastian usually starts from the back. So, determining motives. For instance, there is one possible motive could be that the defendant did it for the vine.
I'm gonna make that my ringtone for whenever you text me. Just that sound bite.
Yep.
Oh my god. But yeah, so that's part of the psych profile that isn't used for locating a person. It's used. I should say it's constructed after like lengthy psyche evals, stuff like that. After being, I guess studied is not the right word. What word am I looking for? Like
investigated, analyzed,
I guess is kind of what I'm going for. Analyzed by a forensic psychologist or a psychiatrist, stuff like that, and then that person can then go on to testify about the defendant, about their mental state, motives, stuff like that, and that can either be incredibly damning or incredibly supportive to the defendant.
Yeah. So one really obvious application is the difference between first and second degree murder. Is that first degree murder is premeditated and planned out, and then second degree murder is heat of the moment type thing. And so if you can get a forensic psychologist to say the defendant is, prone to emotional outbursts, right? Has poor self-control, is very impulsive. You can say this leads us to believe that this was a second degree murder case rather than a first degree murder. So that's important in terms of precisely ascribing what kind of crime to charge someone with or to ultimately convict them of.
Yeah, you have to be precise because in a court of law, the prosecution can use anything against you. So if you're charging someone with something, you can't be vague. You have to have something that you can defend, because the other side is going to be looking for literally any loophole they can find. So the more watertight you can make your case, the more specifically you can accuse someone of a crime, the better.
Yeah.
Also,
because.
Sorry.
Oh yeah. Well, because basically, since we have the standard of innocent until proven guilty, it means that you can have, say, 100 good points, but the defense, if they just have one good point that counters it slightly, then you have to say, do you have a shadow of a doubt? And that can let you get off just innocent, or not guilty. That's why it's not if you're to be precise about it, it's not guilty and innocent, it's guilty and not guilty, because getting acquitted doesn't prove innocence, but it proves non-guilt, right?
Of
so
a specific crime, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not in general, right? There are a lot of bad things that you can do that are not, Yeah. But yeah, no, it is really interesting because, again, something like that. If you charge someone with the improper crime and you try to prove that, then the defense could use what I would say is, it's not a bad argument, because in the scenario it would be a very good argument to use. You would be smart to use it. But if you get someone charged of first degree murder and the appropriate charge was actually second degree murder, then the defense can say, oh yeah, he totally killed that guy, but he never planned it out. So yeah.
So you're accusing, One of the best lines that I think would fit that scenario is the defense can literally say, "You are accusing my client of a crime he did not commit," which isn't wrong if you didn't accuse the right crime. Yeah. So yeah. Also, really quickly, usually the motive is determined afterward, but it can actually be used to help determine who you're charging, because sometimes you have a very narrowed down list, and one person has a reason to want to commit the crime, and someone else might not.
Yeah.
And it's not good on its own, but it sometimes can lead people to look into people more, because it does happen that people like kill people without any reason, but sometimes there is a reason, and sometimes that reason isn't as well hidden as people might think. So
yeah, well, I mean, if you get, for instance, like a serial killer that you see, I don't imagine this really happens, but if you get a situation where you've got like all of the victims are like wealthy and had like a ton of like jewelry or fancy watches, and then all of them are also, their wallets gone, right? Yeah. You can say, okay, the motive would be like robbery here.
Right.
So.
Yeah. On to a similar one is determining mental state, which we kind of touched upon. So, for example, famed criminal lawyer Saul Goodman is stating to the judge that his client Lalo Salamanca is simply built different. I don't know if you guys have seen Better Call Saul.
I've seen. I forget how far I watched into it, but
you're not built different. You're just different.
Which is what the jury said in this case. No, it's actually not true. This guy got off like. Oh, actually, you know what? No, that's spoilers. I'm sorry, but
spoiler
alert.
But you should definitely watch it. But again, so there's a piece of this that, I also want to mention that it's really good that we have these forensic psychologists and psychiatrists to testify on either on behalf or in against a defendant for like correct proceedings of the law and like all that stuff, but also it's the most like justice to a person. I think it's the most justice to the defendant, because if they were actually like legally insane at that point in time and they were not in control of themselves, without these guys it would be very easy to just put that person away as if they were in control of their actions, which is undoubtedly what happened before these guys became part of the FBI. Stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so, like it's better. I mean, when you plead insanity, it's not like you're let off scot-free either. It's just like you go to the asylum rather than the prison, right?
You kind of get like almost like medical attention for what you have. So whatever the issue is, instead of being thrown into prison where it could potentially happen again, you would be put in a safe environment where you wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else or yourself, and maybe even like work on whatever the issue is, depending on what the issue is. So
yeah, depending on the crime.
It's a different situation.
Yeah, definitely. So it is very important to have that around. And you didn't have that. If you go far back enough, it's just like, oh, you did a heinous crime, death by hanging.
Yeah, honestly, if you go back far enough, which it doesn't even have to be that far, it's just like you probably did some heinous crime. We have no evidence for this. I know it because of my soul and the light of the stars. Drowned.
Yeah.
Salem witch trials.
Oh yeah. Yeah. More weight. I saw this movie like maybe a week and a half ago called The Changeling. it was pretty interesting. It took place, like, it was about this sort of serial killing in like 1928. And that was pretty fascinating. The guy got death by hanging, and I'm like, yeah, okay, nice. But yeah, it was interesting because it also talked about like the way that you could just get like thrown into a psych ward in the 20s if they didn't like you, like if you talked too much. And like if you went against the LAPD, it took place in LA. Because basically this woman's son goes missing, right? They return his son, or her son, and then she's like, that's not my son, right? And it wasn't. But they're like, what are you talking about? Of course it's your son. And then they're like, well, since you don't believe it's your son, you must be insane. And so then they just put her in the asylum. So that's like an issue that you can get when you don't have the proper like forensic psychologists, which like now hopefully, you know, that's done better. Now I think it's very difficult to actually put someone in an asylum, like comparatively, I don't know. But yeah, you could just get it, because it was really interesting, right? Because the woman, when she in the movie, when she was thrown into the asylum, she was put there without warrant. But then a few hours later, the cops like went and said, "Oh, we want a warrant to keep this person in an asylum." And then they said, "What's your evidence?" And then they're like, that she was put in a mental asylum. Like it was a circular logic thing. So yeah,
that's rough.
yeah. So it's good now that like that whole scenario, the whole movie actually was one step, at least in LA, that like changed a ton of the LA laws about putting people in asylums. So yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. Going on over to determining negligence.
Yeah, so negligence is an interesting sort of crime, because it basically says that, well, it's a specific thing you have to prove. You have to prove that you should have known to do something, and that you are criminally liable for not doing something.
Ooh,
to like stop.
That's difficult
scenario.
to do.
Yeah, it's difficult to prove, but it's stuff like, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different places it could apply. Sometimes it applies to here we have, it's a car crash, right? It's interesting. I mean, the most obvious case would be caring for your kids.
I was thinking child neglect too. That was the one I was thinking.
Yeah, because it's fairly well understood. We have an understanding in our society that you have a certain amount of responsibility to care for your child or give up custody, because I think, you know, they become ward of the state or whatever. So it's like you either have to provide proper care or relinquish custody. And so if you do not provide proper care, that can be criminal.
The issue with those kinds of cases is defining specifically proper care, because sometimes like it's clearly a case of neglect, and it's really, really hard to prove it because of where the line is with proper care.
Yeah. Another interesting sort of side shoot of that is that you end up sometimes with cases that are about that sort of conflict between neglect and then sort of First Amendment rights, and that being certain religious, like fringe religious sects that deny like medical treatment, like that refuse to have medical treatment, which is fine for themselves, but then they do not give their children medical treatment. And so then the question is, do you have a duty to your child to provide medical treatment? And if so, how much? So that's an interesting one for negligence. But of course, negligence, a big component of negligence is did you know, should you have known, right? That is what the forensic psychologist here is going to prove. Because, it's like, should you have known? Like, you have to say, like, I don't know, should you have known that your child was like sick with a given thing and taken them to the hospital? And then you could have the defense argue that, well, how were you supposed to know that these were the symptoms of some disease? Like maybe whatever. That's sort of the argument that would occur here in a negligence case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have anything on negligence.
Yeah. So
we go on over to...
yeah, sure. In a similar vein.
Wow.
So this... I think I gave the context to Max. This is a WWE match. There's lore to the WWE. On the left is Eddie Guerrero, and on the right is Rey Mysterio. They were two professional wrestlers. I think they're both retired by now. And in the lore, Dominic was raised by Rey Mysterio, but Rey Mysterio found out that Eddie Guerrero is actually the true father of Dominic. So they took it to the only court that matters, the ring, in a ladder match. So what they did is they took a briefcase full of legal documents, suspended it over the ring by a chain, and placed a ladder under it, and told both of them to try and get the briefcase under any means necessary, and whoever gets the briefcase gets custody of Dominic. This is my alternative for divorce court, and this is what should happen. Rey Mysterio did win custody of Dominic, and that is his actual son, like in real life, so that's probably good.
Yeah. But yeah, on another note, on a more serious note, the forensic psychologists in child custody cases, the application here is pretty clear. It's, are the parents mentally fit to take care of the child? Which parent is mentally fit? Which one is going to be better for the child? If the psychologist can diagnose some sort of like mental issue that would negatively affect the child if left in that adult's care, then that can be used as evidence in a child custody hearing against one of the parents. Drug use is also another factor considered, although that's pretty clear cut. You don't really need a psychologist for that. Like, this person is on cocaine, it's kind of obvious there, but yeah, that's an important role of.
Sometimes it would be important based on like how far the addiction has progressed and what the person is doing to solve the issue. But
true. Yeah, because it's like, what if they're both cocaine addicts? And then it's like, okay, which one? You okay? Yeah. But then it's like,
the microphone picked that up, but my shoulder just cracked so loud.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that. But yeah, no, I see what you mean. It's like, it's the psychologists are there to sort of figure out what is going to be the best scenario here.
Yeah, what's the best environment for the kid? That's pretty much it.
Yep.
Yeah. So over on to jury selection.
Oh, wait. Whoops.
Yes.
Can we go back a slide
Yes,
for like
we
2
can.
seconds?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes with child custody, the forensic psychologist also interviews the child depending on the situation.
Right.
Because if you can do
If
a
they're
mental
old enough,
evaluation of the child, you can see how the family life has affected the kid. So it could be a child custody issue of whether the entire family should have the kid at all. So like social services type thing. Sometimes you evaluate the child to see, like, if neglect has happened, or if there's some kind of abuse happening at home, or if, like basically what happened to the kid instead of what happened to the parents. And that is all I had to say, and I'm really sorry I interrupted you.
It's all good.
No worries. Yeah.
Jury selection. It's something that we all will be called upon to do at some point in time.
Oh yeah.
And none of us will be
we've
actually
all got a year
selected.
left of not having to read. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the odds of getting selected for jury duty are, but
I don't want to be on a jury. Like, I really don't want to contribute. So I am just gonna make myself the worst possible candidate. They're gonna be like, "Do you know? Do you know the defendant missed?" And before they even get the name out, I'll be like, "Best friend of my entire life."
Here's the thing: you can't perjure yourself.
What do you mean?
That's what you're doing there.
I'm perjuring myself?
You're perjuring. You're perjuring yourself. You can
live stream.
Well, no, because. Well, he can say whatever he wants right now, but when they're asking you questions for jury selection, you have to the oath to say the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, like a witness would.
What if I don't agree to say that? Do they just let me go?
No, I think they would hold you in contempt of court. But what you can do is they'll ask you a question like, I forget what it's basically, there's one question they ask you about jury nullification. And if you answer that, I might engage in some jury nullification, then they'll kick you out.
We engage in some tomfoolery.
Yeah, there's a CGP Grey video on it, but it's basically saying, like, there's some question that will ask you, like, even if you disagree with the law, will you uphold the law, right? Like, say you're in, I don't know, a state that, like, there are different laws in different states, right? Some will have, where marijuana is still illegal, and say that you are a proponent of legalizing marijuana for medical or recreational use. If you were put on a jury for a, possession of marijuana case, you might get the scenario where you're like, oh yeah, I am pretty convinced that they had marijuana. However, I don't think that should be illegal, so I will say they're not guilty.
Okay.
That is jury nullification. And they really don't want you to do that, obviously. Yeah. So they ask you this question before, like, will you, like, do you have any, I think it's something like, do you have any beliefs that would preclude you from, rendering an accurate verdict or something like that? And if you would engage in jury nullification, then you have to answer, and then they never let you on the jury because of that. So if you want to get a jury, that's your way to go. You just say, yeah, I don't really agree with 100% of the laws that exist, so I'll just render the legally incorrect verdict, but maybe what you believe to be the morally correct verdict, right? That's a very difficult thing. That can get you kicked off a jury, because if the crime is possession of marijuana, you have to say, yes, they're guilty of that. And the jury doesn't generally decide the punishment, the sentencing. I think that's generally the judge that does that. So it's sort of out of your hands. But if you are a strategically minded juror, right, then you can say, well, there's a picture of them holding it in their hands, but I don't think that should be illegal. So I'm going to say not guilty. That can be a problem. But that's a very specific one that applies to just all court cases. However, in jury selection, it is important to sort of say, does this person have any biases or, whatnot? The most obvious one is, do they know the defendant or do they know the victim? If there is a victim, because, sometimes there's not necessarily a victim, but yes. And so then there's other things you could say based on, like, occupation, right? So it's like, if the defendant is, like, say a firefighter and you're also a firefighter, you might be like, well, I feel like they're a good person. Like, it might bias you even. It wouldn't even be that you are intentionally trying to cover for them. It might be that just subconsciously you're thinking, well, I think they're a good person. Or like your, relative was a fireman and you're like, well, I think they're a good person. And it's not even, there's no internal monologue either. It's just implicitly you're going to be more forgiving to this person. So you have to probe for that in a juror.
They want to make sure that there's nothing in the jury that's going to compromise any of the hearings.
Yep.
They want to make sure that no one's going to make a decision that isn't based on evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, crime and punishment.
Oh, yeah.
Crime and punishment.
With Phoenix Wright accusing Dostoevsky.
Yeah. So that's a book, but we're not really talking about the book. I kind of want to read it. It's another one on my list. I have a whole list of, like, I guess, kind of classics that I want to read. And I never have the time. Well, I never make the time, right? So, as I mentioned just a little while ago, judges determine sort of the sentence of the defendant, but a psychologist could be referenced and consulted in determining what a smart sentence would be. The psychologist might have some insight on, is this person going to be a repeat offender? Are they going to improve themselves and become better members of society? I guess this also applies, after the sentence has been dealt, it applies to parole, where the convict is reviewed and, analyzed, and a decision is made, should they be let out early? Have they, reconstructed themselves? Have they made themselves, like, are they not going to do it again? Are they going to be upstanding citizens, right?
Do they have their mental capacity based on their mental state and or mental illnesses to reconstruct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what that's what the psychologists are going to help with.
Yeah, because that's who you would ask, because they're the ones that would know, the behavioral analysis people, that would tell you whether or not the crimes that have already been committed are indicative of someone who would do it again if given the chance.
Yeah.
And again, it also helps you choose a punishment, because you can figure out what exactly you need to do to keep this person from doing it again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just us getting closer to justice, like the proper carrying out of justice and being fair to everyone involved,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there you go. So, further ado, we go on to the final thing we're talking about today. Counseling victims.
Yeah, so that's a pretty basic one as well. After going through a traumatic incident, there's going to, be some counseling necessary generally. And if the victim doesn't have, like, their own private psychologist, they might be helped out by a forensic psychologist. Also, the forensic psychologist would have more knowledge specifically about how to counsel victims than a general psychologist would. Just a general talk therapist is supposed to, has to know about a variety of things, but there's only so far that knowledge can go. And so it might help to consult a forensic psychologist, because it's like their specialty. They know more about how to counsel victims. So that is another role that they serve.
Yeah, it's a focused, they specifically went through a focused education that deals with learning how to counsel victims of, the crimes that we see. So you can go to a talk therapist because there are like normal therapists that know how to deal with victims like this. But the advantage of a forensic psychologist is also that they know more about the perpetrator also. So there's more information, there's more that you can help the victim understand and come to terms with. And
they have
also
more.
Be a really important aspect for healing, to understand what happened.
Mm-hmm. They also have more experience with just the legal system, right? And how the victim has to like go through like police reports and testifying and stuff like that. And so those specific experiences might not be like a talk therapist specialty. So the forensic psychologists are going to be a great resource for someone in that situation.
Much more focused area of expertise.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like if you think of, doctors, right? You have your general practitioner, but if you break your foot, you go to
podiatrist.
Podiatrist. Yeah. So
the foot doctor.
Yeah, the foot doctor.
How do I know that?
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
Where did that information come from?
I was gonna say foot doctor, but I'm like, what? I want to say the Latin version. I want to say the Latin one. So,
podiatry.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that's the sort of purpose served here.
And again, that's also in the sake of fairness, this time to the actual victims of the crime.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which isn't always actually the victim of the crime, because sometimes, like in murder situations, it could be the family.
That as well.
Yeah.
So they do a lot, man. They really do. They are one of the most important cogs in the entire judiciary system in terms of being actually out in the field and on the docket during a trial.
And they're relatively new too. We didn't have this for very long. We didn't even have we didn't even have forensics in general for very long. So it's incredibly important for how new of a development it is. And we're still learning. We're still picking up bits and pieces for how to deal with different things. And, that's a really important area of research too, because it affects so many people.
The American Psychological Association only recognized forensic psychology as a specialty in 2001.
Yeah.
So, right there.
We got to the 21st century before this was a thing.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I guess that moves us into final thoughts.
Yeah. Definitely. So, very important field. And very just interesting as well. It sounds like an interesting kind of job to have. Both sides of it, really. Because, definitely the more TV kind of jobs are exciting, like kind of jobs to have. But I think it's also interesting. It's like working with puzzles all day, It's like working together, like trying to piece a version of events together. Within the legal system, saying, okay, why did someone do this? What does the evidence tell us about their state of mind? And what does the science tell us about their state of mind? So
you just described in the exact metaphor that I used the reason why I want to go into behavioral analysis. I literally said that it's because it's like a puzzle. You get different pieces and you don't know what your picture is going to be. So you don't even know if you have all the pieces. So you literally, sometimes you paint your own pieces. Like you have to construct something based on limited evidence, and it's so cool. It's so cool. Oh my god.
Yeah. Definitely. And then it's also great because with their help, justice is served. Justice is more effectively and more accurately served. So
It's not
that
perfect,
is
but it helps a
yeah.
lot of people.
Definitely.
And we're still learning, so maybe it'll help more.
Yeah. Yeah, that about does it.
Yeah, that was a great episode. That was really nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much, Camilla, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me back. I really like doing these. They're fun.
Yeah, this is fun. You knew a lot. Licensed expert,
yes.
Grizzled 26 years in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it
yeah,
like when you were testifying against Ted Bundy? What was that like?
Oh, well, back in my day.
Anyway, yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us.
Wait, just
yeah.
because you said that real quick, am I the youngest person to ever appear on this live stream? Because
that
Jacob
is an interesting question.
older than me, Brendan is older than me, both of you are older than me, Pluto is older than me, Linnea is older than me, Michael is older than me, Linnea's mom is obviously older than me, Brendan is older than me. I think I'm the youngest person to ever appear on this live stream.
I don't know. What about like Ryan or Michael or something like that?
I think Ryan's older than me. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I don't think I missed that episode.
That's weird though. You would think there'd be at least one, like, August, September, or so on birthdays. But I guess the thing is, it's very popular up there to do the whole like holding back thing for late birthdays.
Yeah.
For instance, my brother's a December birthday, right? So he's like a grade behind of like where he theoretically should be. It's literally like days from New Year's, so it's like I think it's justified. But you get people doing it, especially up north.
If you get your brother on the show at least once, then he'll be the
youngest. Yeah, he would be the youngest. But yeah. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Sebastian, for being my co-host as always, and returning youngest guest on the show, pending investigation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thanks for coming, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.